breath. So has that got a pretty picture of me and my lovely relishes on there? Okay, right, now we start properly. Sorry about that, everybody. I will put my laptop in for an MOT later today. Okay, so thank you very much, Anne. Thank you for doing a wonderful filling job there. And welcome to today's Startup Club session, where, as we've already pointed out, we're going to be talking about how to plan and develop your marketing strategy as a new business. So a number of you, I'm sure, were along at last week's session, so I will just keep my introduction very brief. For those of you that weren't along last week and have not met me before, my name's Ashley Cavers, and I'm a business advisor with OxLEP. I've been working on a number of their startup and growth programs for the last couple of years now. And I also, particularly relevant for today, I have a background in journalism, marketing and PR, having worked for Sky and BBC, as well as running my own PR and marketing consultancy in the past as well. And finally, also relevant today, I also run a startup myself called the Wonky Food Company. We make products from imperfect and surplus fruit and veg, so helping to tackle the problem of food waste. And if you were at last week's session with me, you would have heard me talk at some length about my journey of taking an idea and getting it ready for market, taking it through all the various stages of preparation, ready for launch. So today we're going to be focusing on the next step. So you've launched your new product or your new service, you're open for business and you're ready to sell, which is all very exciting. And that is a huge achievement just to have got this far. But as many of you are no doubt discovering in your own businesses, the hard work, in truth, is only really just beginning. So you'll have to forgive me looking off screen because my monitors are now around the wrong way. So you'll probably be looking at the side of my head, but you don't need to be looking at me. You want to be looking at the slides anyway. So this slide has a rather scary statistic. So this is according to Companies House records, the number of new companies that were created in the UK in the 12 months up to March this year. So if you're good at your maths, that is actually more than one a minute. And the number being created this year is set to become the highest on record because, as you can imagine, the fallout from COVID has prompted many more people to start their own businesses. And there may be some of you in the room here today who fall into that category. But by the way, I think that is really exciting. I'm not showing you this statistic to scare you. What I think it should do is illustrate that you're part of not just a growing club and community of startups here in Oxfordshire, but also a new national and international wave of business startups. And I think that's something that we should all be celebrating at a time when, let's face it, there's not a lot to celebrate at the moment. But with all of these businesses starting up, and you can see where I'm going with this, you need to find a way of being able to be seen and to be heard. You've got to cut through all that noise of all those other lovely shiny new startups and make sure that you're getting noticed. So because having that great product, having that great service is of course really, really important. It's essential. You know, a product or service that meets that customer need, is well executed, is well designed, brilliantly delivered, comes with great customer service and has a really strong brand with it as well. All of that's really important, and we touched upon a number of those areas last week. But the harsh truth is that you can have the best product or the best service in the world, but if no one hears about it, then you're simply not going to make those sales that you need to make your business grow and to be able to survive in the marketplace. So it is worth reinforcing why all new businesses need an effective marketing strategy. I think too many businesses still see marketing as a nice to have rather than a need to have. Perhaps you see it as something that you might spend money on once you're a bit bigger, once you're a bit more established, once you've started making those sales and you've got the money coming in. But actually the truth is, when you're a startup, that's exactly when you need effective marketing the most. So for the avoidance of doubt, let's just be clear about the benefits of marketing. First of all, it's to promote your company, to get out there, to be seen, to be visible. It's obviously to increase sales, to drive purchases of your product or service. It's also to retain customers. Very important to get that repeat business from customers. And also to be able to compete and grow in the marketplace. So that's the reasons why, but how do you make sure that you've got a good marketing strategy? So I think it's also important to say from the beginning as well that if you do have the budget, there are lots of options to outsource your marketing, to outsource all of these elements of the business. From large multi-channel marketing agencies who will look after every single aspect of your marketing activity, to freelancers who might specialise in one area, such as social media or the digital marketing side. And it has to be said that we're very lucky here in the county, and there are some very, very talented freelance professionals in Oxfordshire. But I'm going to make the assumption today that most people in the room are pretty early stage with their projects or their companies, and that you're working within a budget, and that it's important for you to understand how to market your business relatively inexpensively yourself. And my strong advice always would be anyway, that even if you do go on eventually to outsource some certain elements of your marketing, or eventually you may actually employ a marketing specialist to work in your business, as a business owner and entrepreneur, you should at least be familiar with the basics of marketing, even if you're not the one that ultimately further down the line takes responsibility for it. Okay. So having a clear marketing strategy is important from the very beginning of your business. Now, there are a million templates out there. If you Google, have a look on the internet, lots and lots of different templates and versions of marketing plans. But by and large, they all cover the same core areas, which you can distill down to these key steps. So number one, mission and vision, which is what you do, and more importantly, why you do it. Number two, your marketing goals, which more specifically is how will your marketing help to articulate this mission and vision that you have for your business. Then number three, your customers. You need to make sure that you know them inside out. Number four, finding your brand voice. This is all about how you speak to your customers. Number five, choosing your channels. So especially in this day and age, there are many, many ways to market your business, but the trick is for you to identify the most effective ways to actually reach the customers that are relevant to your brand and business. And finally, six, action. That's basically making sure how you actually get stuff done. All important. It's all very well and good talking about theory, but unless you execute it, it's not going to do you much good. Okay, so number one then on our plan, mission and vision. So I'm a huge believer in the importance of a clear mission and vision statement for your business. This is all about your who, what, and your why. Now, this is something that you should have already incorporated into your business plan, but it's certainly worth repeating in your marketing planning and strategy as well. Now, I think there's sometimes a misunderstanding or a bit of an apprehension that it somehow has to be something very lofty and grand and how you're going to change the world, but it doesn't have to be. Brilliant if you are out there to change the world. Goodness knows we all it needs a bit of changing at the moment. We all need a bit of inspiration, but you don't have to have such grand ambitions. You could be a financial consultant, for example, and your mission and vision is all about demystifying financial management, helping people take control of their finances, worrying less about their money. That could be at the heart of your mission and vision. Or I had a session yesterday actually with a client, and all about his mission and vision. He realised he had lost his way a bit, wasn't quite sure what he was doing with his business. And at the beginning of the session, he thought that his business was all about manufacturing supplements. That's what he does. He manufactures health supplements. But by the end of the session, he realised that actually what he does, his why, is all about helping people live better lives by feeling healthier. That was his why, not his manufacturing of the pills, the supplements. That's the what he's doing, but his why was about helping people. I'm sure many of you have seen it already, but I'm just going to mention it in case you haven't, because it's well worth watching. And that's Simon Sinek, the business writer, his Start With Why TED Talk, and he's written books about it as well. Just quick Google on YouTube and you can see it. But it really captures this whole importance of making sure you understand what motivates you in your business, because basically that that steers your business, that keeps you focused, keeps you motivated and on track. So in mission vision, these are the key areas that you need to be talking about. You need to figure out what it is that you do, why do you do it, what are your values, and what makes you different. If you can really dig down and answer those, then you can really form a clear mission and vision, and that then helps inform all of your other marketing messages, as we'll go on and see. So the mission and vision is the big picture. It's the big strategy, but then you need to get more specific about what exactly you want your marketing to do for you. So we've already talked about the primary goals of marketing, which is you're promoting your business, increasing your sales, retaining customers, and competing and growing in the marketplace. And I'm going to take it as a given that you all share those ambitions and objectives for your business here today. But individually, all of you then need to start to drill down and ask exactly, what is it that you want to say? What is your call to action to your customers? What are the key messages that you want to communicate in order to help you achieve those goals and your overall mission and vision? Now, you can start to unpick these with a good old-fashioned brainstorm or a whiteboard session with your team if you have one, or by yourself, or with a trusted advisor or mentor, or even a friend, because you'll undoubtedly have a lot of these messages. You'll know what you want to say. It'll all be up there in your head, but you may not have recognized them and articulated them clearly at this stage. So always helps to use an example. So if I use the Wonky Food Company, as it's the business that I know best. So we actually had a great marketing session recently with the wonderful independent Oxford, some of you may know of. If not, look them up, local organisation. And they helped us to really define these goals or messages that we wanted to communicate with our customers to help us ultimately increase our sales, but also increase our impact by stopping more food going to waste. So with Wonky, we developed our specific or our core goals as being able to raise awareness the quality and versatility of the product. The fact that we like to think that our relishes are more than just a relish. But in the course of identifying those core goals, those key messages, we also uncovered other themes and messages and discussion points that broadly fit within those core goals, but were still really useful to tease out in a bit more detail. And those are the things that help to identify us as a brand, and which we want to make sure that we are bringing into all of our marketing messaging. So in our case, it's having a passion for a cause. That's really important, an important part of who we are. Also being more than a product. So as I just said, being more than a relish. Also being part of this wave of conscious consumerism that many of you are probably aware of. People wanting to buy more than ever, wanting to buy more ethically and more sustainably. And also wanting to challenge the notion that just because we're using waste products doesn't mean that they should be cheap, should come cheap. So these are all key things that as a business that we need to be incorporating into our marketing and messaging every time we post, every time we talk to our customers. So that's about identifying what you want to talk about. But the next most important thing is then deciding who you want to say it to. So this, of course, is your customer. Now, I'm sure hopefully you have done a little bit of work on this already, and I know we touched upon this a little bit last week, but it's something that I wanted to expand on in more detail today. So as part of your research phase, you will have identified your target customer or customers. Remember, you quite possibly have multiple customer segments. But when it comes to marketing, it is worth going a step further and really getting to know your customer, almost like they're your best friend. And a useful exercise is to create a customer avatar, or sometimes called a buying profile or buying persona. And again, you could go online and you could find 100 different templates for doing this. But this slide here shows you the key areas you need to focus on, and also the questions that you need to be asking. So, and that really does go down into the nitty gritty, the detail. So how old are your customers? What do they do for a living? Where do they live? What do they do in their free time? What gives them pleasure? Also, you know, where are their influences? Where are their sources of information and news? Do they use social media? Would they rather use newspapers? Do they watch the TV? What are the brands that they like to buy? And also, crucially, what are their pain points as well? So these are the problems, the challenges, or the needs that you've identified that your business helps to solve or to address. Okay, so to illustrate a customer avatar or buyer profile, here's one of our Wonky Food Company customer targets. So meet Harry and B, and don't they look smug? So we identified this customer segment very early on in our research for the business. So Harry and B, they're professional 30-somethings with quite a healthy combined household income. They're thinking of starting a family, or possibly already have 1 or 2 young children under the age of 4, probably. They're metropolitan, city-based, probably live in Oxford, London, Bristol, Leeds, Edinburgh. They're health conscious, quite possibly vegetarian or vegan. Pre-COVID, they would have liked to go shopping at the weekends, probably hanging out at their local farmers market or farm shop on a Saturday morning. And in the evening, throwing a nice dinner party for their friends. They like cooking, they're foodies. They'll buy the Sunday papers. They might occasionally get a Guardian on the Saturday, but they get a lot of their information and a lot of their influences are from things that they read on social media. They buy our product, they buy Wonky primarily because of the mission. They want to feel like they're making a difference, even in small ways, tiny ways, like buying a jar of relish. They want to feel like they're having an impact on huge issues such as climate change and food waste. So doing an exercise like this might seem a little bit extreme, a little bit forced, and a few of you might be wincing just at the thought of doing it now, but it really, really does help you to shape your marketing, because the simple truth is you can't say anything effective unless you know who you're talking to. You can't talk to a brick wall or talk to your monitor. You need to have another human being that you're talking to, even in this case, they're a virtual human being, an avatar. So Harry and B for us were a very early market as we launched, which was just over 2 years ago now. And we were fairly confident that there would be Harry and B's out there who would buy into our product. But as we started to sell and get a better picture of our customers, we also found we had another unexpected target market. Meet Steve. Now, we didn't know about Steve. We didn't know Steve existed when we started our business. Well, we knew that Steves were out there, but we didn't think necessarily that he would be a customer of ours. But we kept bumping into Steve at food festivals, at farmers markets, at tastings that we did in supermarkets and other retailers. So we soon realized that Steve was a pretty important customer. So meet Steve. He's between the age of 40 to 65. Big bracket there. He's a professional, possibly an early retiree. He's a true foodie. Loves his condiments. Quite possibly likes to grow his own veggies as well. Might have his own allotment. He's very interested in local news and events. So he reads all the local papers. He likes to listen to the radio. And he cares about where his food comes from. You know, food provenance is important to him, but that won't be the first reason why he's buying the product. He's buying because he likes the taste. He loves relishes and probably loves the chili kick as well. And the reason I'm telling you about Steve is because what that shows is that your understanding of who your customer is an evolving process. It will change over time. So you need to be prepared to attract customers that you didn't expect to attract first of all when you started, and then you need to adapt your marketing accordingly. So these profiles, these personas, it's a really good exercise for you to do with your business and map them out. Do a digital version, do a pen and ink version, but pop it up on your wall in your office. And before you write a Facebook post, put together a blog for your website, write your monthly newsletter, make sure you've got those key customer segments in your mind, and it will make the job a lot easier. Okay, so now you've identified what you want to say with your messaging. You've also identified who you want to say it to, but also really important is how you say it. And this often gets overlooked. So every time you post, you blog, you write an article, even down to how you actually sign off an email to a customer, you are using your brand voice. And this applies equally to B2B and to B2C companies. I think a lot of people make that mistake of thinking that marketing is more for B2C, but actually B2B businesses need to be thinking about all of these things as well. So I'm guessing that a few of you are probably a step ahead of me here, but we're seeing this list of words here. But what's really important is that you're clear and consistent in your tone of voice, as that's how people start to buy into you, because they get to know you in the same way that you're getting to know them through the customer avatars. They know what to expect from your brand values, your culture, your customer service, because it's reflected in the way that you speak to them. So how do you find your tone of voice? Well, a good exercise is to choose 10 adjectives to describe your business. So as I said, some of you are probably a step ahead of me here. So this is a list, obviously a non-exhaustive list of adjectives, but it might even be worth just doing now quickly while I'm talking. So pick 10 adjectives on there which you think describes your brand or your business. And if your business is you, so if it's you and your services that you're selling, then this is partly going to be an exercise in describing yourself. So pick the good bits, obviously. Marketing, as you'll come to realise, is all about being very selective in what you reveal. So I'll give you a moment if you are wanting to have a go at doing that now. So picking your 10 adjectives, and don't overthink it either. You'll probably have a pretty instinctive feel for what describes you, and clearly choose any other adjectives that may not be on this list. There are many, many more. But once you've chosen your 10, I want you to then whittle that down to 3, which is clearly a far harder exercise and might be something that I'll leave you to do later in your own time. But once you've whittled that down to 3, then that's just a really good way of honing in on your voice, on what's important to you, and reflecting your brand culture and your brand values. Just to give myself a chance to have a slug of water, take a pause there, and I don't know, Ant, if anybody's got any questions at this stage, or shall we just keep going?
There's been lots of chat. People have shared the link to the YouTube video that you mentioned with Simon Sinek, and people have asked about whether we're sharing the video, but nobody's asked any specific questions yet. But I'm writing lots of notes around this. I guess I've got a question here. So, you know, I could write down. I'm going through that list and I'm writing down the 10 adjectives. And I get the list and then I look and think, why can't I be fierce or, yeah, the ones I've written down are quite boring in some ways, you know, capable, efficient, predictable. But actually that's what, by me doing this, that's what my customers are wanting. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I think, and we will sort of mention this a little bit later on, but authenticity is really important. You might want to be majestic and lively and lush and some of these other words, but if that's not true to who you either are as an individual, as a business person, or if that's not true to the brand, to the product that you are selling, then that's going to strike a duff note and customers aren't going to buy into that. So you can't create something that isn't already there. It's about choosing the right words to reflect the product or service that you're aiming to sell and to put out there. Yeah. And it's making sure that you're not putting out mixed messages. Again, just bringing it back to, so with wonky, we could have been really worthy about our messaging. So frighten everybody with all the awful statistics, and they are awful statistics about food waste and how that affects climate change. We could have had a much more sort of campaigning edge to us. But we decided we didn't want to do that. We wanted to be a bit more playful in our marketing. So that helped steer us from our labeling on our jars to everything, to the website that we created, to the tone of voice that we strike in our newsletters and messaging. We could have gone the other way. We could have been really earnest and serious, and that is an equally valid way to go. But if we started mixing up those two types of messaging, I think we would confuse our customers and they wouldn't quite know what sort of company they were buying from. So it's all about that consistency and authenticity. It's really important.
Okay, great. Thank you. There's a question, the questions are flooding in now. So there's a question that comes right back to this, and then there's a couple of questions that are about earlier points. So just on this then, so Neil has asked, you know, should we choose a contrasting range of 3 adjectives that are true to you and your business? So contrasting.
Well, again, Neil, if you can kind of live by that, I mean, you know, these aren't going to be a direct reflection. We're all going to choose slightly enhanced versions of ourselves or our brand. But I think as long as they could be contrasting, but not contradictory, I think is how I would answer that. Contrast is fine, but as long as they don't contradict each other and therefore not make sense, I think then absolutely it's fine.
And how much could you or should you be engaging the customer in the selection of these adjectives? I mean, given that we're, you know, a full range of businesses here, if people haven't done this, is it worth them engaging their customers and finding out how the customers would describe them?
Yeah, well, absolutely. And this would go back. So this would be a step earlier. So when you're doing, so this is pre-launch, probably when you're doing your research phase for your business and you're going out there and you're talking to prospective customers and you're you might have some preliminary, you might have your prototype. We talked quite a lot last week about designing a prototype. So you may have your prototype product or service and you're going to run that past focus groups. So say we'd gone out with our very worthy messaging. We might have had people turning around saying, I'm not sure, you're a bit too serious, a bit too, I don't want to feel like I'm being lectured at. I wouldn't buy that, but I would buy something that was a little bit more colourful and attractive and made me feel good about the fact that I was buying something and helping the planet at the same time. So yes, your brand values, your image, your culture, your aesthetics are all something that you should work into that very early customer research phase that we talked about last week.
Fantastic. And then I'm going to try to merge this question so that we don't spend too long at this point and we let you carry on. But when we've got B2B, and you talked about the personas and the customer segmentation, should people be trying to think about the business as the buyer or about the person in the business as the buyer? So for instance, a chief exec or a director who makes the buying decisions.
That's a really, really good question. And I think especially perhaps for a service, yes, so in B2B, that is really important. And yes is the answer, because it might, you know, an HR, if you're selling, let's say, you want to sell some health and well-being workshops that are aimed at, you know, corporate clients. It's no point in going to the FD of that company, the finance director, and actually you can probably take a good guess that the CEO is going to be pretty busy on other things as well, the MD. But if it's a large organization, then who's going to be thinking about the health and well-being of their staff? Who's going to have been given a budget? Who's going to have been given targets that they have to reach? It's going to be an HR director, probably, at a guess. So yes, you need to get inside the heads of that HR director. What are their priorities? What are their pain points? Going back to that avatar. So you would tweak it slightly. You're not necessarily going to care too much about where that HR director is shopping or what papers she's reading, but you're going to picture her or him in their office. You know, what are the challenges that they're meeting? What are the restrictions on their time? Asking those sorts of questions that are a bit more relevant.
Okay, fantastic. Hopefully that covers some of the questions we've had there, but if not, and you wanted more specific detail, then please do post that again. But let's let you carry on for now then, Ashley.
Okay, and I think we'll have another chance at the end as well to pick up on some more questions. Okie doke. Right, so that is all about finding your brand voice. So now you know what you want to say, you know who you want to say it to, you also know how you're going to say it, but the all important question is, how on earth are you going to get that message to your customer or client? How are you going to reach them? Today, in this world of digital media that we live in, there are clearly many, many more channels. By channels, we mean routes, tools, mediums to reach customers than ever used to exist before. So it can feel a little bit mind-boggling and daunting. And it's really important that you choose the right ones for you. You do not have to be everywhere at all times. So for those of you who were at the session last week, you might remember I warned against the danger of falling into that rabbit hole of marketing and branding and communications generally. I've seen way too many businesses, and I'll hold my hand up, I've been guilty of this myself, of making that mistake of thinking you're being busy with your marketing rather than being productive. So just because you spend a whole day on Twitter following loads of new businesses or prospective clients or customers and sending out loads of posts, that doesn't necessarily mean you've been effective in your marketing. So it's all about being as productive and as selective as you can with the marketing channels that you choose. Otherwise, let's face it, it's basically just vanity. If you keep posting up lovely pictures on your Instagram, but you're not attracting any new followers and that's not converting into any sales, then why are you doing it other than just for vanity? So I think it's probably worth going through in a little bit of detail. So on the next couple of slides, we have a matrix of some of these marketing channels that are available to you as a business. You can read these at your leisure, but let's just take a little bit of time going through to understand the benefits of each, and maybe there are a few that you hadn't thought were relevant to your business before. So first up, email. And it's funny, in this world of social media, email almost seems old-fashioned, but never underestimate the value of a really good mailing list. So if you use a platform, especially something like MailChimp or Constant Contact that somebody was telling me about the other day, these platforms make it really easy these days to send an email, to design your newsletters, first of all, to schedule when you can send them, and most importantly, being able to measure your reach with them as well. So you can actually see, using tools like that, how many people are actually opening your emails, how many people are reading them, how many people are sending them straight to the recycling bin. And the great thing about sending emails, sending newsletters via emails, is that you can segment your audience into different groups to enable you to be really, really targeted in your messaging. So Wonky, for example, we have a mailing list that we send to our trade clients, so to the actual retailers, the shops, the supermarkets that sell the product, which is going to be a very different newsletter and a different tone of voice that we use to the ones that we send out to our customers, to you and I, to the end user. People often ask with email, with newsletters, how often they should be doing it. How often should you send a newsletter out to your mailing list? And the answer is really when you have something of value to say, and that's of value to your customer, not necessarily what you think might be valuable to you. So you might have won another shiny new award and you're very excited about that, but is your customer really going to care that much? You need to think about that. They'll be interested if you've got a promotion on your product, or if you've got a new product line coming out, or a new service to offer as part of your portfolio of services, but they don't want to see just endless boasts about, a networking event you went along to or an award that you received. That makes you feel good, not necessarily something the customer wants to read about. But being more specific, you probably don't want to send any less than every 3 months, and certainly no more than once a week. So next up, your website. So if you have a website, and I can think of very, very few businesses these days that wouldn't have one, then you want to be making sure that people can find it. So I'm sure many of you here today have heard by now of SEO, so search engine optimization. It's often regarded as a bit of a black art in marketing, but essentially all it's about is being able to boost your website to the top of the internet search rankings so that more people can find your business. Sorry, my dog's just made an appearance in the background, please ignore. Because SEO can get a little bit technical, this is commonly one area of marketing that people are quick to outsource. Even if it's just to get a digital marketing expert in at an early stage of your business, just to do a bit of an audit of your website and make sure that you've set up everything, you've got your keywords, you've got your tags and so forth, just to make sure you've done everything you can do to optimize that opportunity of people being able to find your website. But if you can't afford to outsource this part at all, then it is worth checking out some other resources. So I mentioned one there on the slide called Ahrefs. Now I know a lot of small businesses, certainly in my network, who've been using this completely free resource to help teach themselves the basics of SEO, and they rave about it and actually become a bit of a convert and a bit of a fan of SEO. But another great free resource which is really worth knowing about is Google's Digital Garage, which you may have heard about. And there you can access a whole range of completely free courses all about digital marketing, and they break it down into every single little step and stage. And you can even get a little certificate at the end of it, but they're worth checking out as well if you want to skill yourself in these areas. Even if you do ultimately outsource to somebody else, remember, as I said before, it's really good that as an entrepreneur, as a business owner yourself, you understand the basics before you pass them on to somebody else. But again, I think even, pretty much without exception, everybody needs these days at least a basic landing page for their business. However, if your website is not going to be your main customer acquisition tool, if that's not how customers are going to find you, if you're a service business who you're going to get most of your business through word of mouth, through referrals, through networking, through events, then don't plow too much time, money and attention into SEO. It's not a priority for you. But if you're an e-commerce business and you're going to be doing the majority of your selling online, then you absolutely have to be all over your SEO. So next up, social media. Now I'm going to take it that everybody knows the difference between Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. So I'm not going to do a blow-by-blow profile of all of the different social media channels. And we did touch upon this last week, so I don't want to spend too much time today, because quite frankly, you could spend all day just talking about Facebook. And I also wanted to direct you to a couple of other OxLEP workshops actually that are coming up. So I don't know, Ant might be able to just drop you some links in the chat, or if you just go onto the OxLEP Business Eventbrite site, you can find out more information. But tonight at 7 o'clock, for example, there's a webinar all about how to grow your business on LinkedIn, which is a really, really important resource for B2B businesses in particular. And then next Wednesday at 7 o'clock, there's a webinar looking at 5 ways to use social media to get more customers. So that will go into a little bit more detail there as well. But for today, I just want you to really think about what social media channels are best for you and for your business and for your brand, and to make sure that you don't feel like you have to use them all. So for example, if you're in an e-commerce business and you have some beautiful, very photogenic products, you should be all over Instagram. But again, going back to if you're a financial services business, Instagram and Facebook are really not going to get you very far. LinkedIn is going to be your number one tool. But whatever tools you do end up choosing, whichever social media channels you choose, the key thing is to make sure you're posting frequently and that you're also being consistent. So that's consistent in the messaging. So remember those marketing messages that you will have brainstormed and had on your whiteboard, but also in that tone of voice, that brand voice that you've also thought about and developed as well by this stage. Okay, so next on the list, content marketing. So this is all about really making sure that you're promoting your area of expertise by writing guides, blogs, or could be case studies, that help you to build a strong reputation in your field. It can also help with SEO as well, has some very practical purposes, as it can drive more customers to your website and boost you up the rankings. The downside of content marketing is it can take a bit of time, but actually it also, I think, is one of the more creative and enjoyable parts of marketing as well. You're not working out analytics or, you know, the latest changes that Google have made to their Google ads. It's actually something where you hopefully are talking from the heart about your business and what you're doing, and you're telling stories about the products and who you're wanting to reach and how you're doing that and your journey as a business. And hopefully you'll also be able to, over time, build up a bank of content that you can keep and repurpose and reuse. So every Halloween or every Valentine's Day, you're not having to create something from scratch. You can look at what you sent last year and tweak it and rejig it and update it for this year. Okay. So the next one, PR. Now, I used to be a journalist. I've also worked in PR myself, and I really believe that a lot of small businesses miss the opportunity to get some valuable free coverage in the media. So whether it's local papers to national magazines to TV or radio or websites, journalists are looking for content all the time. They are hungry for content. So if you've got a good story to tell, then reach out, because somebody will want to listen. As we mentioned last week as well, it's even better if you can find a newsworthy hook to hang that story on. And these days as well, there are also some really good platforms out there to help introduce brands and businesses to journalists in a more direct way. It used to be a case of writing a press release and just blanket bombing every single news desk or media outlet in the country or overseas. And you know, the hit rate for that was a bit hit and miss. The return rate not great. But if you can be in a more curated space, especially ones that are quite sector specific as well, it can be a great way of being able to pitch your idea directly to journalists, and also to get to know a little bit more about what journalists are looking for. So a couple I mentioned there that I've used, I know other people have used, lightbulbhangout.com, pressloft.com. I think they've both got quite sort of low monthly membership subscription rates, but worth checking out to see if they're relevant for you. But another really useful tip is to search the hashtag @journorequests on Twitter mainly. So journalists use this. It's an accepted tool in trade, that they use this when they're looking for a subject for a story. So it's another way of being able to pitch directly to journalists without having to blanket bomb them. So just, you know, intermittently be checking @journo requests, especially if you're following some specific influencers or journalists or bloggers who are you know, writing about your sector, your area. Make sure you're following them and checking if they're putting any requests out. So next one on the list, exhibitions and events. So clearly not quite so relevant at the moment, but in normal times, events can be a really great way of meeting with engaged and motivated customers. It can be quite an expensive way of meeting directly with your customers. Booking a pitch or a stand often costs quite a lot of money, at trade shows in particular. But it can be a great way of making either direct sales or generating really useful feedback, for example, on a new product or a new service that you might be launching, and using that event to shout about. And yes, a really great way of generating leads, but do make sure that you have a good way of capturing that data. So anybody that's coming to your stand and stall, make sure you're capturing their details, and make sure you follow up on every lead that you generate as well. Now, advertising. Clearly, this is where the money comes in. You need to have a budget if you're going to do paid advertising. But whether it's in trade directories, online, or in the press, it can be a really effective and targeted way of reaching your customers. especially online with digital advertising campaigns. So using Facebook or Google ad campaigns can actually be a really low cost way of getting a good return. But the word return is really important, and one we'll touch upon again in a moment. You do need to make sure you are measuring your return. Don't just throw money at Facebook ads week in, week out, and then not actually check the analytics to see who has actually been buying as a result of those ads. When you have a product business, it's a bit easier to map those conversion rates. With a service business, you sometimes have to do a little bit more manual tracking to see which leads have been generated by which advertising mediums. But if you can, it's really worth going through that measuring process. So finally, on that pick of marketing channels is direct mail and leafleting. Now this has fallen out of fashion somewhat in recent years, partly because of the environmental cost of doing a mail drop. None of us like to get loads and loads of junk mail through our letterbox. And while clearly this is something to bear in mind, I think a well-targeted leaflet or postal campaign can still be a really effective way of reaching customers. I think in a way it's gone the other way, and we're all bombarded now with so many emails and digital adverts that actually receiving something physical, something tactile, almost seems like a novelty. I spoke to a business recently. They were a design agency, so they knew what they were doing, but they printed up some beautiful postcards, something that you and I can easily do by going on to various sort of online printers and publishers. And they sent these postcards out to all of their current and past customers during lockdown, during the first lockdown this year. And just on the back of that postcard, they included a short handwritten message to their customers, which it wasn't a sales message. They weren't trying to flog anything. It was just a, hi, how are you? We're just checking in, letting you know that we're still here, we're still open for business. And actually, he was telling me that led to a huge conversion rate, one of the best conversion rates they'd ever had on any marketing campaign. And they weren't even doing it as an overt marketing campaign. They genuinely just wanted to reach out and say hello to their customers. So sometimes that personal, almost non-salesy marketing approach can generate the best results and make a real difference. So that is a bit of a whistle-stop tour of some of the key marketing channels that you can use, all of which have pros and cons. But there is one other marketing tool that I wanted to pay particular attention to today because it can get overlooked, and that is the case study. So by case study, I also include things like testimonials, reviews, even recommendations on your LinkedIn page. I would put all of those into this category. And what the case study can do so effectively in this age of digital overload and automation everywhere is bring that personal experience to bear, which can be really, really powerful. Most of us, by that I mean most of us as customers, we're not very brave. We don't like to take risks. We don't like to be the first to try something new. There are, of course, exceptions to that. Some people love being the first in line, but as a general rule, we like to play it safe. So we want to hear that somebody else has already tried and tested the product or service that we're thinking of spending our hard-earned money on. So that's why a 5-star review on TripAdvisor is going to be much more powerful to that hotel owner than any glossy full-page advert he might take out in one of the travel magazines. Now, the key ingredients of a good case study, because it's not as straightforward as it might sound, so you've got to get some things right to have an effective case study. And the key ingredients, the first one is making sure you present very clearly what is the problem, the challenge, the need that was faced by that customer or client who you worked with, and then demonstrate how you solved or met that need or problem or challenge. And this goes right back, if you remember from last week, to that value proposition, which should be there right at the heart of your business. What is the problem out there that your business solves? And then it's illustrating how you met that problem or need, using pictures, using video, using audio if possible to bring it to life. Because you're probably going to use this piece of content on your social media channels. So you want to be able to grab people's attention. And video in particular is an effective way of doing this. But by video, I don't mean hiring in a full camera crew. You can, a quick testimonial or quote using an iPhone is absolutely fine, but keep it short. So don't go out producing some Scorsese epic here or novel length case study. It's got to be something that customers can digest quickly and easily if it's going to really hit its mark. And finally, and this goes back to what I was saying to Ant earlier, it's really important to stay authentic. Now, this applies to case studies, but applies to all of your marketing, because none of us at the end of the day want to feel like we're being overtly sold to, even if we know on one level that that's what the business, what the brand is trying to do. But we can all spot sales speak a mile away. So, and it's a turn off, right? We don't like it. So in your case study or your testimonial, you've got to ensure that what we're hearing is not sales speak, but it's the customer or the client's own words. Okay, so now you've got your whole marketing toolbox with a choice of tools and channels at your disposal. But the next challenge, and this is a biggie, is execution. So it's actually getting the stuff done. One of the most common challenges I hear when talking to small businesses, and again, I will hold up my hands and include my own business in this, it's finding the time. Marketing so often slips to the bottom of the to-do list, or it's again seen as something to do another time when you're bigger, when you have more money, when you've got more time. But it doesn't have to feel like this massive mountain to climb. There are a number of effective strategies and tools that you can use. So the first is to have a plan or a map of your core marketing activity. So those channels that you've decided that are the best fit for your business. So you've looked at all the choices and you've matched the various channels to your brand and your business. And this map doesn't have to be anything too sophisticated. I'll show you there. It can just be a straightforward grid or spreadsheet like this, something that's at a glance. You have it up on your wall. It reminds you what you need to be doing every day, every week, every month with your marketing. How often you're sending out your newsletters, how often you're posting on LinkedIn. And so as well as your timings, it's also just reminding you who you're targeting and also what your objectives are, what you're trying to achieve with that marketing activity, and also how long and how much money should you be spending on it as well. Remember that all important measuring of what you do. And there are tools out there to help you. Before that, I'd say one of the most important things that you need to do as well is ring fencing your time for marketing, because it can be very tricky to do in fits and bursts and do a bit every day, because as we've already noted, it's something that often gets bumped to the bottom of the pile. So I recommend to businesses that I work with spending an hour a day or perhaps half a day a week, just finding a pattern that works for you, but diarise that time. Actually stick it in your diary. Don't let any other appointments get in the way. Make that priority for that time slot. And when it comes to social media in particular, there are lots of tools out there also to help you plan your content. So some of you may have come across tools like Buffer or Content Cow. I use Content Cow quite a lot. And that enables you to line up at the beginning of the month. For example, if you decide you want to do just a day a month that you're going to spend just on marketing and get it all out of the way, then you can line up all of your Instagram posts, your Facebook posts, your tweets, do it once and they're ready to go for the rest of the month. So you don't have that daily nagging feeling of, oh, I've not gone onto my Insta, I've not posted a tweet today. However, one word of warning with these scheduling tools is that being able to schedule in advance is great, but it is still worth throwing in a few spontaneous and reactive posts and activity. What you don't want, for example, is there to be some massive global news event and you've forgotten about your pre-scheduled tweet, which might then strike a bit of a duff note or seem insensitive or be a bit inappropriate given the wider circumstances. And finally, mentioned it a number of times today, measure. Your time and effort and your money is extremely precious, especially when you're starting a new business. And I imagine you are most likely doing almost everything yourself. You need to make sure that you are using your time and money effectively. And marketing is a learning process. So schedule regular reviews to measure the success of your marketing and to adapt and adjust your activity accordingly. So you might, for example, want to measure the increase in traffic to your website after an email campaign, which has directed them to go there, or it might be the number of new followers on your Facebook page or new leads that you've generated through a campaign. Conscious of time, and I think we're pretty much at the end there. I realise we have covered an awful lot, but obviously one of the points of these sessions is just to give you an introduction and hopefully to signpost you and to get you thinking about some areas in your business that you may have not put enough thought into already. And then it's over to you as well to go out and do the legwork, do the research, find out more. But hopefully that's given you lots to think about when it comes to your marketing. And do we have any questions?
I'm sure it has, Ashley. I've wrote so much down there. So many things I want to do. There are a couple of questions, and no doubt as soon as you say questions, people will write more. There's a really great one from Gerard. I won't read the whole lot, but in simple terms, there's so many things that small businesses could be doing. Webinars like this will give you lots of things to do. How do we prioritize and by extension decide what not to do?
Oh gosh, that is a really good question, and it's a discipline. And I think you know, when you are an early stage startup, do you know what? There's nothing wrong with throwing yourself into absolutely everything. I would say soak up every single opportunity out there. Go to the webinars, go to networking events, meet as many people as you can, talk to as many people as you can, read every free podcast and tutorial and webinar online as well. And over time, you will start to get a feel for where your priorities lay and the best medium for you as well for learning and developing your business. I always remember somebody saying to me about networking in particular, which can be a bit of a danger, I think, to early stage businesses. You sign up for absolutely everything and you love going and talking about your new business. But as somebody pointed out, there's only one letter difference between networking and not working. So, you know, it's going out there and trying everything, but then taking that moment to reflect and think, what did I really gain from that? What were the benefits? What were the tangible benefits I can take away? And sometimes, you know, you may have learned one nugget from a 2-hour webinar or tutorial, but you know what? That nugget will serve you in fantastic stead through the rest of your business life, and you'll be so glad that you turned up to that webinar because there was that one thing that really helped you. I think it's the measuring argument. It's take that moment to reflect on your activity and is it really benefiting your business? If it's not, then you need to look again at your activity.
Great answer, and Gerard likes it. Thank you. So we lost a few people at the end there. I think we probably advertised this as an hour, but clearly that was my late start. No, with the quality of the content and a little bit of a late start, we have lost 4 or 5 people. So you've still got well over 30, or you've got 30 people still on. So any more questions for Ashley? Everybody's got lots to think about. Everybody wants your slides. Everybody would like to see the video. I think we probably will end up putting the video on YouTube and sharing a link so that it's not too big. I will check. I think last week's video is probably there, but I will check and we'll get the links sent out. That would be quite useful because in a way, sort of so anybody that missed last week, that's kind of the first step to, getting your product and service ready. And then this is sort of the post-launch and building your marketing. So be quite good to have the two together. Yeah. And the first webinar that we did 4 weeks ago now, we didn't record, but we have got the slides. That was with one of our colleagues, Paul Holmes, who shared about the business model canvas and your business planning. And you know, those who've been through these 3 sessions now will see the consistent language. You know, Paul talked about really understanding your value proposition. Ashley's brought some of those things through today. Paul talked about being really clear on the channels and how you're going to reach your clients and your customers. These things come through, you know, it all connects. So,
and I would just add as well that, you know, don't be daunted as well. There is, you know, there is so much to think about when you start a new business, but it's step by step, and you'll be amazed at how quickly you pick things up. And I think being able to form a community like this, I know it's hard times to be able to build a community, but it is still possible through using, you know, Zoom and other platforms. But being able to build a community around you of other like-minded businesses and entrepreneurs is really, really helpful. It's stood me and continues to stand me in good stead. So hopefully that's something that we can help facilitate a bit as well through the Growth Hub and through OxLEP.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Ashley. As I said, I've learnt loads. I'll certainly be going through the slides again. Thank you for persevering with your technical challenges at the start. It was definitely worth it. And yeah, thank you to everyone who's joined this webinar. We will, as we said, we'll send out a link to everyone afterwards, which will include a link to the feedback survey. We'll also share a link to the business support tool. If you've not filled it in yet, the business support tool is the key to your door to getting one-to-one support. Now, Ashley is one of our one-to-one advisors. However, Ashley is one of our most popular one-to-one advisors. So there is a long waiting list to get some one-to-one time with Ashley. But the key to that is the business support tool. So we'll share a range of links. One of the gentlemen shared a link to something called Telegraph. I know there's a little chat going on in the background. Please do join that. This is about helping you to connect. But as I said on the first week, OxLEP Startup Club, join all these other things, but keep coming back. So OxLEP Startup Club all the time. And we'll be having more dates in January. So thank you, Toby, for sharing that again. Okay, right. If there's nothing else, we will leave it there and we can all go off and get a late lunch. And don't forget, you can go to the pub tonight. Go and spend whatever money you have got with the local shops, local hospitality venues. They all need our help.
Absolutely, I'll second that. And yes, I'm off down my local tonight. So yes, thank you everybody for coming. My apologies again for the tech issues, but great that you could stay with us. So thank you.
Thanks then. Bye everyone. And I will now stop the recording.